Welcome to the What Doesn't Kill Me podcast, a podcast for those with chronic illness, chronic pain, and for those that love and support us. I'm Meg Quinlist, your host. After 45 years of living with debilitating rheumatoid arthritis and having had over 45 surgeries, I have learned a thing or two. Chronic pain can be a lonely existence. It can leave us feeling alienated and disconnected from others. So just know that this is a safe space. We are going to share our wisdom and our woes. We're going to offer support and advice so that we thrive. Today's guest is Heather Gibson. Heather has fibromyalgia and migraines. She is going to give us the following insights: how fibromyalgia and migraines are alike and why her migraines are harder for Heather to deal with. The second insight is the importance of alternate therapies in the treatment of fibromyalgia. The third insight, the importance of an open mind and being your own advocate. The last insight she's going to give us is the best advice that Heather has had for anyone living in chronic pain. So let's welcome Heather to the program.
Welcome to the program, Heather. So nice to see you. We met the other day. Happy you're here.
Hi, May. Good to be with you.
So happy you're here. So I am thrilled. The way that Heather and I actually got introduced was through Connie, who was on the last episode that I did about Parkinson's. So did Connie have you watch the podcast, her episode, and then ask you if you wanted to do it? Was that how?
Actually, he told me about it first and told me how it went. He really enjoyed it and thought that it would be helpful for people to hear my story. And so then she just introduced us.
And it's going to be great because you have fibromyalgia and migraines. So you have, I think, a double whammy, obviously a double whammy. And I think fibromyalgia, just from the little bit that I know and from researching it a little bit to prepare for this, I think it's one of the most difficult as far as diagnosis goes, as far as treatment goes, and as far as figuring out what's going to work for you individually. If we could just get into a little bit of your background, just to know, like, simple questions like, where were you born and what year were you born in?
I'm a Generation Xer. How's that?
That's perfect. I do think just the age group is important so people understand, because it does correlate with different ages sometimes. You know, not all the times, but
Sure.
Some diseases do or illnesses do. Okay, so where were you born?
I was born in Ohio, rural Appalachia, Ohio.
Oh, wow. Okay, man, what a difference. You're in Florida now. What
Right.
night and day. Now, you did mention that you had a tough childhood.
I did. I grew up, my mother was a single mother for a lot of my early years. I lost my father when I was 6 years old. And so that was very difficult because I was definitely a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
And then when she remarried, it wasn't a great choice in
Oh.
partners. We had a lot of domestic violence stuff when we were growing
Oh, my
up.
God.
So, yeah, it was a bit rough. I will say that she did teach me the importance of being independent and how strong women can be. It was not an easy lesson plan, but I
Learned it. I just want to say I'm so sorry about losing your father, because that is, I think, one of the hardest things for a child is to lose one parent or the other and to try to grow up. And there's not a day that goes by that you don't think of the fact your father's not there. And how proud would it be of
No.
you? Yeah. So I just wanted to
No, and
apologize for that.
Well, I appreciate that. I think people always say that time heals, and I don't believe that.
I don't either.
Because I think the older I get, the harder it is because he misses more of my
Yeah.
life. And it's
Them.
definitely forged fire.
Yes,
I would
forged from
definitely-
fire. I like that. Very good. I would say I totally agree with you on that. So what were you like in high school?
I had a lot of friends. I was an honor roll student. I wasn't, which is, it's funny because people that know me now would never believe I was definitely not a rule breaker. And I'm definitely one now. But I think that life does that. So we learn as we go. And I was probably more on the quiet side. I had friends and things, but I only had a couple of really good friends, really close friends. And that's true to this day. My inner circle is pretty tight.
That's nice. I find depth to me is very important. Depth of friendships is even more than breadth of friendships. The more deeper personal friendships you have, that's the type of thing I need. And it sounds like you do as well. And you cultivate those friendships that really help you and give you a lot of support.
I've come to a place in my life that my energy is my currency. It's so important to me because
Yes.
I have to maintain and reserve as much as I can. So I'm just at that stage in my life where I don't share energy with people that can't reciprocate.
I think that's a really good lesson. And I think it would help if more people kind of embrace that concept, because your energy is your worth. It shouldn't be given lightly, especially when you have a chronic illness. So what would your friend describe you as, the friends that you had?
I thought about this, and I probably should have asked with you. I did ask my daughter for the family question.
Good.
I'm a fun type. Like, we always have good times, and I always try to foster the good time and make lots of memories. They would probably say something about my cooking because I always
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh my God. I wish we lived closer.
funny because when we get together, the writers group, I'm the designated cook. They would probably have something to say about that. And I'm very big on loyalty. Even friends that have become distant, not like that I'm not loyal to the things that they shared with me or the secrets that we keep. That's a big piece of who I am.
Would you say that your daughter or your family would describe you in the same way?
It's funny because I asked because I really thought the fun thing would come out because that's like what all their friends say about me to them. And that's not what they said, actually. My middle daughter said authentic was the word that she would
Oh, that's
use to
beautiful.
describe me. And my oldest one said selfless. It's interesting to ask those people around you.
Yes, we tend to think that they view us either similar to how we view ourselves, or like you said, when you do ask them, you're shocked at the response you get. And I can see my kids not saying the fun piece either. They would say something completely different. And sometimes the fun in me embarrasses them a bit. That might make somebody else laugh, but they're embarrassed by it. What oddball talent do you have?
Oddball talent is so subjective. The oldest one said, Mom, you always find the best things and places to go and do, like off out of the ordinary. Like, people would never think of it. They would never see them. They would never find them. And then my middle daughter chimed in and she said, well, I think she's like that with everything, not just places. Like, she sees the uniqueness and places, things, people, all kinds of things. So
Wow.
I don't know if that's really a talent. But
No, that is a talent. Oh my gosh. Oh, Heather, that is a huge talent. Not a lot of people, I mean, I don't know a lot of people that can do that, especially being able to see the best in people and also finding a great place to go. You'd be a good travel agent.
I know that's what they say all the time. I told you when we talked that my first daughter was a heart transplant. So she was young, 6 weeks old when that happened. And so
Sure.
I learned a very hard lesson, again, forced by fire, right? I learned a very hard lesson about making memories and what's really important in life. And so I've spent the last 24 years doing just that with those that I love and are close to me, is thinking I really give a lot of consideration to the memories that we're making together and how we can do things that they're never going to forget or they'll always remember.
So you're here today to talk to us about your fibromyalgia and your migraines. And we were talking a little bit about myalgia, which is a mouthful to say in and of itself. But I just did a little bit of research and I'll just share what I found out about it because I was surprised. They actually call it a chronic condition that's characterized by a range of symptoms. They don't say it's an autoimmune disease. They don't say it's a bacterial infection because they really don't know how or why someone gets it at this point. And it's basically characterized by a range of symptoms like muscle tenderness, muscle pain, sleep disorder, fatigue in the daytime. And there's more than that. I'm sure you can share some of those as well. But it's interesting. And the way when I was looking at it, I went on Mayo Clinic and they say that the way that they come up with a diagnosis for it is they rule out so many other things it could be, like, for instance, MS or RA. And the actual American College of Rheumatology has come up with a list of 18 specific tender points on the body. And what they say is you would need at least 11 of those points that are painful to the touch to be considered to have fibromyalgia. Now, that's something that's been relatively new, but have you ever heard of any of that at all, Heather?
So when I was diagnosed, it really was checking the boxes, right? Do you check these boxes? And I had a lot of testing done, MRIs, CT, things like that, and spinal tap kinds of things to do the rule out process
Yeah.
I'm talking about. I do remember, because it's been a few years, but I do remember the touching different parts of my body and asking me if I felt pain. The difficulty with me is on top of all that, I also have neuropathy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so some of my points, I may have not felt at all anyway because of the neuropathy.
Uh,
There was a lot of testing, EMGs and things like that were done as well. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, it was a grueling process. And honestly, had I not been seeking treatment for the migraines because they had been so severe that they were causing blindness and I was falling a lot, I don't know that I would have ever gotten a fibro diagnosis because I'm simply not the type of person to run to the doctor for things. I typically
Yes.
try to deal with it myself. And so I probably would have gone an extremely long time without a diagnosis on that just because the migraine testing is what actually brought the fibro diagnosis to the forefront.
Well, that's really interesting because I know you had said too that you didn't go the typical treatment route because you weren't even really aware that you had this fibro and you were really looking for the migraine relief. And so let's talk a little bit about your migraines, if you could describe that, because that again I don't know a lot about migraines, but that was something I had never heard before. So tell us a little bit about how your migraines present themselves.
They're very debilitating when I don't have them under control. Like I said, I lose vision. And so the fibro stuff, I could work through that, right? Because that was pain and I have a pretty high pain tolerance. Like I said, I had neuropathy too. So I could work through the fibro. But the migraines, when it knocks your vision out, you got to deal with it.
You're suddenly blind.
And so at the time, I was actually a CEO for a not-for-profit when it started progressing. Like I've had them for a really long time. After I had my second daughter, they escalated. They thought that it may be hormonal. And so they actually did a partial hysterectomy on me to try to reconcile it. That did not obviously help. They're atypical, meaning that I usually don't get the pain like a lot of people associate with migraines. They talk a lot about the pain. Now, if I let it go and don't deal with it, it can present like that. That's like the extreme for me, where most people, that's like the beginning. It's the other way for me. I'll get the nausea. Usually it's my vision is the first thing that happens. I get really wonky vision and I get off balance a lot, which is why I was falling.
Yeah.
So I'll start to see these black dots, and it's almost like you're looking through a screen, but that screen will get denser and denser until it completely blacks out if I don't do something to mitigate it. I remember the worst experience I had with it when I was like, oh God, I got to do something about this. But I was doing a training on trauma. I was a certified trauma trainer as well. And I was doing a training for teachers in the school district on one of their in-service days. And I was standing in front of them doing it. And thank God I knew this training inside and out, right? I'd done it so many times. But I was standing there and then the whole room was black. Like they just blacked out.
Oh, God.
And I carried on. I just kept talking and I kept thinking it's going to come back. It's going to come back. And it did. But then what it was like those cartoons where you just see like fleshy faces and there's no details.
Oh my God.
I couldn't make out the details, just the colors. And then I finally was able to get to a stopping point and I said to the girls that were training with me, I said, I need you to take over. And so she took over and I went to the side and it finally resolved itself enough for me to drive home. But then at that point, I was like, this is like something, this is way more than a regular migraine. But then I ended up in a neurology and seeing a neurologist and that specialized in migraines.
Okay.
And he was the one that ran all the testing and he also diagnosed me with the fibro.
Now, a question for you. Does that mean that you have to always have your migraine medicine within reach so that it goes black like that? How do you walk around to go get your medicine?
I've gotten to the point now where I can feel my vision will start to go wonky and I'm like, oh, here it comes. And so then I'll immediately do an intervention to keep from coming on full force.
Yeah.
Now, there are times if I have like if something extremely stressful happens and it's just like a boom moment, right?
Yeah.
Like a buildup, then that's a different ballgame. But that doesn't happen as often now that I've been doing the regimen that I do every day.
Yeah. And you're so aware too to be looking out for it, like you said, and you know what regimens do. And you said a lot in your answers, but it's always to be prepared and to pre-treat to make sure you don't get to that point. And you have figured out what things make it worse, which is stress was one of the big things. I think as a country, we underestimate or we don't respect how much stress damages our bodies and does such a number on our health. And I think until you have some type of situation like you have, it's really hard to appreciate the power of stress. Yeah.
Yeah. It literally can kill.
It really can.
Stress can kill. It really can. But prevention for me is the key. I'm much better at preventing. I would rather prevent than react.
Yeah.
In life general, but particularly with the migraines and the fibro.
Yeah.
It's just, I have to maintain that regimen. I have to maintain my diet. I talked to you about the aqua aerobics that I do, like getting in my pool, the diet, the exercise, all those things that, yeah. And the supplement regimen, I have to maintain that or else it will escalate.
So let's talk about, and then we'll segue into that. I'll just talk about when I looked up what the so-called standard treatment is for someone with fibromyalgia. It's said here that there is no one pill that treats or cures fibromyalgia. Doctors use a multidisciplinary approach, both medicine and alternative therapies. And you talked a lot about the alternative therapies, but some of them that they mentioned was acupuncture, biofeedback, yoga, and massage. So it was very interesting to see how they matched up with what you had been working on. They said exercise is probably one of the most important things for treatment, keeping stress under control, and that's what some of those alternative therapies for. They do treat it with antidepressants. Elavil is one of them they use. It's just something that helps with pain, fatigue, and depression, and sleep. Lexerol is another one that they use because it's a muscle relaxer. And Lyrica, it's an anticonvulsant drug that was approved by the FDA for fibromyalgia. And Duloxetine, it's an antidepressant and it's used to treat it. And Solvelia, which is an SNRI, reduces pain, improves physical function. With rheumatoid arthritis, there's a shit ton of drugs that they use. So I was surprised at how little bit they're really even from those drugs. I mean, that's a good amount, but I mean, I would imagine a lot of people can't tolerate some of those or have side effects from some of those. So that's where those alternative medicines and those more holistic approaches become so important. And the other thing, Heather, I was amazed to find out that 5 million adults have fibromyalgia. And it's also 6 times more likely in women than men. Men do get it, but not nearly as often as women. Yeah, I was so amazed at that. And the other thing is they said one of the big things with fibromyalgia is your brains are low in serotonin. And I'm sure we kind of touched on that, which is it's very interesting. So talk about some of the really specific things that you have found that have really helped you over the years. You've done some things that maybe you tried and didn't work as much, and then you turned to these alternatives.
Yes, a lot of people are like me, like I was in the beginning, have not gotten the diagnosis, just dealing with it.
You're right. Yeah.
So I think that number is higher. It doesn't surprise me that the women are higher because I think that women internalize stress more than men.
Oh.
Men are able to release it in different ways. And I think that women internalize it more. And we are a bit of overthinkers generally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I think that it's easier for us to take on the stress.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And particularly when you're a caregiver, if you have children, you're doing the caregiving. If you have a career, you're doing that on top of it. So there's a lot of multitasking that's happening that creates stress too. So none of that surprises me. So I will say that when I first started trying to prioritize my health, it started with my diet because that really wasn't about me. That was about my daughter that I talked about before. She was getting chronically ill, being hospitalized annually for pneumonia. We were constantly fighting that balance of suppressing her immune system for the transplant and keeping her healthy on the other side of it. So she has to be healthy, but not too healthy. If she's too healthy, then her body rejects the heart. So there was a balancing act. And when she came home from the hospital, she came home on 15 prescription medications.
Wow.
And so my goal was always to try to reduce as much of that as I could, because we don't know the side effects that prescription meds have on a growing baby,
Yes,
on a
absolutely.
child. We have all those organs and body function. It's all still developing. So I wanted to minimize the impact of the prescription meds on her. So I worked really hard to build a system for everyone in the house, actually. It's good for her, it's good for everybody. She is now 23 years post transplant this year, and she's on from 15 meds, she's down to 2.
That's amazing.
So just done really well with it. But the annual trip to the hospital, or when something would go through the school system, a common cold that everybody else just dealt with, she would be out for 3 or 4 days. And so it was a constant stressor on her. My aunt, who has MS, had started an organic diet to mitigate her symptoms from the MS. And so I started doing research on that. I started with a book called The Maker's Diet by Jordan Rubin. And that's basically where the diet portion of my journey began. We switched over everything in the house, and I was an extreme couponer. So when I said we're switching everything out, everybody was like, what? We have 50 boxes of cereal in the pantry.
Oh, just, yeah.
And so they actually went in and counted them. I have 53 boxes of cereal in the pantry.
God. Did you get them away?
No, I said, okay, so we're going to do this gradually, and
Yes.
I'm going to replace the things that we have to buy weekly, right? So the milk, we started using raw milk.
Right.
The bread, I made my own. So I bought organic flour and all those things. I got a bread maker, started making my own bread. The meat, we started buying the organic grass-fed, and then we actually got livestock because we had a small farm. We actually started raising our own meat.
Wow.
And I bought the farm eggs. And then where I'm from, we have a pretty significant Amish community. And so I was able to tap into a lot of those things with bulk. They would order organic flour for me in 50-pound bags, organic sugar in 50-pound bags,
Yeah.
the real salt. So those kinds of things that you buy produce. I joined a CSA and started getting the boxes. And the kids loved that. They absolutely loved that because we never knew what we were going to get. It was going to be whatever
like
was from the
Christmas.
garden that week. And they got to try lots of things that they may have never tried because of that box. And they would look up recipes and all kinds of things. So we made it a whole
made it fun. You actually made it fun, didn't you?
We did. We had a good time with that. So then I started, because again, I'm from rural Appalachia. My grandparents all canned and preserved food. They actually had farms as well. So I wasn't a stranger to it, but life takes over and life gets busy, and it's so much easier, right?
Oh, yeah.
Convenient.
Definitely.
Convenient. And so, and it is more costly to buy organic.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it yourself or you have a supplier where you're buying it in bulk. So I started actually buying in bulk from the Amish, my vegetables, and preserving them and canning them. And taught the girls how to do that. So we started doing that. That's how we had our vegetables. So that's how I started. My spices I replaced as they ran out. I just started replacing stuff with the good stuff. So it's not like I wiped my whole pantry out. But it was easier for me to do the perishables first.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's how I did it. That's how we converted. And we actually do like an 80-20, which is 80% organic, non-GMO stuff, and then 20% is just an allowance for life. When we go out to eat or choose the places that we go, we're pretty picky about where we go. Because when you detox your body from all that, you put it back in, your body's like, no.
Doesn't sit well.
And it will revolt against you.
Yeah, it definitely will. If you haven't had beef or a certain type of beef in a long time, whoa, yeah, it's not pleasant.
Yeah, so that's the way that we started with the diet. What happened, though, and what really shocked me was when I went and saw the naturopath about, what can I do here? Because, again, I'm not looking for prescription meds. I don't tolerate them well anyway.
Yes.
They couldn't give me pain medicine. I can't tolerate it.
Oh, wow.
So the most I could do was like ibuprofen 800. I can't tolerate prescription meds very well. So then I went to a naturopath to see like what can we do, you know, on this spectrum of things, because I was already doing an organic diet. I had started essential oils as well. I replaced all my over-the-counter meds with essential oils. So my girls had roller balls for allergy season. We used essential oils for pain stuff.
Now, tell me what essential oils. I'm not real sure about that, but is this something you rub on your skin, the essential oils, or is it something you actually taste or does it depend on what it's for?
It depends on what it's for, and it depends on the oil, because not all oils are ingestible. You have to be careful about that, but there are some that are, and we even made like capsules that we could take for antibiotic kinds of things. So we did essential oils. So I had already done that part of it. It still wasn't enough, right? So I went to the naturopath, and she was like, okay, well, I want to do a food allergy panel. And I was like, I'm not allergic.
I mean,
to
so
food. Like,
pure. Right. Good.
Yeah, I love food and I love cooking. Don't tell me I'm allergic to food, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, so she ran the panel and she called me and she said, okay, so this is not good. Your panel looks like a Christmas tree.
Oh,
and I
geez.
said, oh. And she said, yeah, you're pretty much allergic to almost everything on some level.
Gosh.
And I was like, oh, what are you talking about? So she sends it to me, and it was stuff like broccoli and bananas and things that you would think are healthy for you. And I literally cried. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, all this time, I thought I was doing good for my body, and my body was actually inflamed by what I was putting in it. And so
Wow.
she ran a inflammation level, and the cutoff point was 85. Mine was like over 250. So I had a ton of inflammation in my body. She said, I really don't think you're actually allergic to all this stuff. I think you have leaky gut syndrome. And she said, I want to treat you for that and then repeat the testing. And so I was like, okay, whatever, because like I can't not eat all this food, right?
Yes.
Like there was like 5 or 6 things that I wasn't allergic to.
Oh my gosh, that would be so disheartening.
Yeah. So she put me on an AIP diet. So she did the anti-inflammatory protocol with me, and we did that for 30 days. It was 30 rough days, let me tell you, because finding food without sugar in it or without all the additives and all those things, and finding recipes that everybody in the house could eat, because if you find that stuff, you want to be able to use it, right? It's expensive.
Yes, definitely.
So we did it for 30.
Congratulations. That's amazing. Yeah.
And then she gave me a supplement that I drank every morning, and that was for 60 days. We waited 3 months after that, and I kept a little bit of the diet. Like, I managed it better.
Yeah.
I could figure out which things triggered it. So I know that new carbs made me really sluggish.
Makes
and
sense.
If I ate too many of them, I felt like crap for a few days.
Yeah.
So I minimized that. I figured some things out in that 30 days and the 30 thereafter. At 3 months, we repeated the test, and then I was only allergic at that point to asparagus, bananas, and pineapples. So I went from almost everything down to 3 things just by doing that protocol. My inflammation dropped over 100 points.
Jeez.
So that was definitely more manageable.
Right.
And so then I began looking for supplements that would support what I knew at that point. I knew the inflammation was a chronic problem for me. I needed something that was going to deal with that. So I looked at turmeric supplements and things like that. After all the research, I ended up landing on something like 18 pills a day, and they were all supplements. I had 2 pills that were prescriptions. One was an anti-seizure medicine that they gave me for my migraines, and then I had a diuretic. And so those were my 2 prescription meds. I also was doing a shot. At that time, it was Amavig. It only lasted a couple of weeks. Like, and I was actually in my belly where I had to do it. It's almost like an insulin shot, but it was for the migraine.
Okay.
So that's what I started with. I ended up switching out the Amavig to Emgality because they thought that would work better. And what I found was remarkable. When I started the Emgality, it only worked for about 3 weeks again out of the month, but it took care of the fibro. And I was amazed. I was like, what's the deal here? And so I brought it up to my neurologist, and he was like, well, I don't know why it's working for that.
Not
It's
designed
for
for
that. I was, well, I don't know why either. I just know it is.
just telling you it is.
So I actually talked to my daughter, the oldest. By this point, she's in pharmacy school for her doctorate. And so I'm like, hey, what do you think the deal with this is? And so she did all the research on it, and she said, Mom, it makes total sense. Like, it's affecting the brain, and it's affecting the pain receptors in the brain. She was like, it makes total sense from
Totally.
a biological standpoint
Yeah.
as to why it would help. I'm not sure why they're not seeing that. And so I went back again for my follow-up, and I was like, look, I don't know what the deal is, but I'm telling you this works. And I know you have other patients with fibro.
Yeah.
And I said, so I really think that you should look into it. So he literally right there in the exam room, he gets out his laptop, he pulls it up, he looks into his medical things, and he sees there's actual testimonies from people saying the same thing that I've been telling them, that yes, and it works, and Emgality is working. And
Wow.
so they actually were going to start trials on it for treatment for fibro. And I was like, thank God, because, I know there are people out there, and
Yeah.
it only works for 3 weeks, but that's 3
Oh,
weeks
3
better
weeks
than
is
no weeks.
fantastic. Yes,
And
absolutely.
so, so I found out that worked.
That's great, Heather. Yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful. So I did that for a while, and then insurance got to be a real pain in the ass. I'll just say it.
They really are.
They didn't want to cover it. It's an expensive thought. They didn't want to cover it. I was constantly fighting it.
Oh,
The drug company that makes it tried to give me like a buffer card, but then if the insurance declines it, that doesn't kick in. It was a whole situation. There's got to be something else that I can do. I'm eating 18 pills a day. And so finally, my cousin, who is actually an optometrist, her bachelor's is in dietary health, she texted me. She's like, hey, I think you should look at this. And so she brought me in contact with a line called Live Pure. And so I went and sat through one of their presentations. He had already done the research into it, and I trusted what he had found. Yeah, and I went ahead and listened, and it followed all the stuff that I had learned previously in my research. It wasn't anything earth-shattering that I didn't already know, but it was in the product. I started that several months ago, and what I've been able to actually cut that 18 pills down to like 6 or 8, depending on if I have to use a pill instead of the drink.
yes.
Because there are actual shots like shooters. So between 6 and 8 a day, I'm down to.
That's very doable too. Yeah.
The biggest impact, that's an overall impact, right? That's the inflammation piece. That's lowering the inflammation piece. That's dealing with the fibro. The bigger impact has been the migraine cocktail that they have 3 products that you mix. And I have never gotten relief so fast. Anything, even my breakthrough meds.
That's amazing. And you did send me the information. And it's funny because I have a girlfriend of mine who has her doctorate in Chinese medicine. So she's completely educated in that. I sent her a copy of it and I said, hey, Mary, what do you think about this? Because there are a lot of vitamin lines out there that are filled with a lot of stuff that's not exactly the best for you. But once you told me this, I was like, well, she really is a good advocate for this, and she's really good representative, especially because you've been using it. I sent it to her, and she was really impressed with the ingredients. She was like, wow, she said, this is some of the things that I put in for my patients when they need treatments for anti-inflammatory, when they need treatments for gut health. And she was really impressed because I think I'm going to get some of them too. So I sent her the link. Yeah, so she may end up purchasing, and I thought, that's something I want to try as well. Now, just to be upfront, I just wanted to let people know that you do sell this correctly. Is that right, Heather? You make probably some percentage off it.
After I learned about it, I actually became a brand partner. It's not about that for me. It's about bringing solutions to people.
Absolutely.
Because I looked for so long myself for something that was going to be beneficial. And it may not be for everyone.
It may not be. And you can't guarantee that. And you're not saying that. Be loud and clear, everybody.
No.
She's not saying this is going to work for everybody. But I think it's important enough that I will put out the links that you shared with me. I'm going to put those links out there with a disclaimer that, we can't guarantee anything, but there'll be links.
No, I think it's important for anybody that's dealing with a chronic illness to have an open mind and be open to try different things. I know that it's really hard. It's super hard because we live in a society where everybody wants immediate results, right?
Yes.
They want to be able to pop a pill and everything be fixed. And the reality is this didn't happen overnight. I didn't acquire these overnight. I didn't just wake up one morning with fibro, right? It's something that happens progressively, and it's something that's going to take time, right,
Yes.
to rectify. And
Yeah.
so I think, and I love that you sent it to her, because I think it's important people do their own research. I'm a huge advocate. We have to become more responsible for ourselves and our own health care and
Yes.
quit relying on the medical system for that, because again, we are not cookie cutter. Everybody is individual. What works for some may not work for others. And it's just a matter sometimes, and especially with fibro, like you said, from the barrage of medications that you read, they don't have it figured out either.
They don't.
So I don't know how we would unless we're actually open to trying different things and finding an individual approach to what works for us.
Yes. That's what I loved about our discussion, is because you really cemented that point home. And I do find that sometimes people are too dependent on what their doctor says and don't do any further exploring than the basic things that their doctor have given them, and don't even do enough research to really understand their disease and what other options are out there.
It does. I've learned the importance of lab work.
Yes.
And monitoring. It's super important to get a baseline, right? And monitor that and know your numbers, know what your numbers are, because they have a range, right? But everybody's range is not the same. They can have range. Where you are in that range can really affect. And I'll give you an example with her, magnesium. So a lot of people don't think about magnesium. And it's funny because I just had this conversation with her the other day. She did a case presentation. She's in her final year of her doctorate, and so she had to do a case presentation.
For her.
And she's doing an internship, and she said now the joke during rounds is when they ask her what her recommendation is, they're all like, wait, did we check her mag levels? Did we check her mag levels? Because the go-to for her impacts people so much, and they don't even realize it. But for instance, there's a range for the magnesium level. And what I found with her over the years and monitoring her labs is that if she was just borderline or a little bit above, it was not good enough. She needed to be on the high end of that range for her to be functioning. Otherwise, she was cranky, she was stressed out, she was moody, very grouchy, and that's not her.
Right.
She's not that typical person. So I figured out that magnesium played a huge role in that. It plays a huge role in your sleeping, how well you sleep. And so you've got to know where that is. Vitamin D is the same way. I know for me, I have to be at the high end of that vitamin D level for me to feel good. You can fix your mag level.
That's right.
Your vitamin D with simple over-the-counter supplements. I mean, get the good stuff.
And I wanted to ask you that. How did you figure out? Because I just got a bunch of blood work done, and now I'm like, I wonder what my magnesium level was. And like you said, everything was within normal range, but just because it's within normal range doesn't mean that it's enough. Like where am I in that range? And maybe I need to be at the very top end of that. So I'm going to definitely, when we're done, I'm going to go look at my blood work. But how did you figure out that you needed to be or she needed to be at the top range of the magnesium level? Was it just how she was feeling and you tried it and tracked how she was feeling now and how her symptoms and how her whole body felt different? So
we would increase her magnesium. And when it was in the higher range, I noticed that she acted different. She felt better. She just functioned better. And so then when it would get lower, and they would say it's in normal range, and I would say that's not her normal.
Yeah.
That's the difference. You got to know what your normal is.
That is so true.
And so lab work is a big piece for me. I track that. I watch it to know what my normal is now from tracking it. I think that the other thing is we actually did a training on craniosacral therapy. And after I had my last daughter, my hip was completely out, and I tried everything. I tried massage, I tried everything. And I was literally dragging my left leg. I was fortunate enough because we worked with children, in-house therapies, and I worked with an occupational therapist, and he was phenomenal, but he was trained in craniosacral work. One day during a meeting, he said to me, turn around and walk back out and walk back in for me. And he said, you're dragging your left leg. I said, I am in so much pain.
Wow.
And he said, we're going to fix that. And so he worked on me for a couple of weeks
Wow.
doing craniosacral therapy. And that was a lifesaver for me. He left and moved to Texas, and I was heartbroken because not just for me, but for the children that we worked with, because we changed lives with that therapy, especially with kids that had CT and different things like that. He really changed lives. So I was heartbroken. I actually wrote a grant, and we received it for us to get trained in it ourselves. And so we all went for a week and got level 1 training. The institute we were trained through is actually based out of Florida, West Palm.
Okay.
It's called Upledger Institute. You can go there and you can search for a craniosacral therapist in your area. The cool thing about it, and why I bring this up for people with fibro, is because it is not deep pressure massage. It is the weight of a nickel laying on your finger is as much pressure as they put.
Just key for someone with fibro. I mean, that's key. Yeah. You couldn't do a hard weight or any kind of force. Yes, absolutely. Okay.
So the craniosacral therapy, when we went to the class, they gave us a book, and it was called Your Inner Physician. That's the name of the book, okay? And you can get it, like, you don't have to go to that class to get it. You can order it. It's called Your Inner Physician. But what it talks about is the body's ability to heal itself. Given the right circumstances and the right support, our bodies are designed to heal. And so I learned that lesson. Through that, which has helped me in these later years, right, with the diet, the exercise, all those things that help, the supplements that help me. It's me creating the environment within my body to support it, to heal.
To support healing.
It's easier now than it used to be, but you can go buy organic bread now. But before, I'd make plans for that, right? If I knew we were going to have sandwiches for the kids for school or whatever. That was my Sunday, which I spent preparing for the week, so that, because I was a working mom and I had a career. And so I worked, 70 hours a week, easy.
Right.
So I had to have everything in a line. It can be done, but it does take a commitment.
It does take
a commitment to yourself. Like I said, I started with my daughter. I didn't start because of me.
And you're always better for your children. You always treat them better than you treat yourself.
You do for everybody else before you do for yourself, until you can't do for yourself anymore. And so when you hit that wall, then you have to get serious, and you have to take responsibility for it. And you just can't lay it all at the feet of the white coat standing in front of you at the doctor's office.
I love how you say that, because that is true. We do. A lot of them get put up on pedestals that they're going to have all the answers, and what they tell me or they don't tell me is what I'm going to go by. But you have found out some serious information about how to help yourself without needing to take the medications. And we're not saying that there's anything wrong with medications. If they are working for you and you're not having side effects, that is fantastic. But with fibromyalgia, it's one of those type of illnesses that the medicines just don't cut it. I mean, there's a lot of illnesses that are like that, or they hadn't found the right thing yet. Maybe someday there'll be something.
Well,
or you don't even respond well to drugs.
And for years, I did do the stop. I did do that, and it was a bridge for me. So
that's a good point.
It has its place. Obviously, my daughter's on prescription med transplant.
Has to be.
So I'm not saying that they don't have a place. What I'm saying is that let's pick the low-hanging fruit first.
Yes.
Let's do the things for ourselves that we can do. Let's make ourselves better.
Yes.
So you're going to need some intervention while you're walking down that road. It's not an overnight thing.
Yes, exactly.
And in this country, our diets are atrocious.
And you go to other countries, especially European countries, and they go to the grocery store every day and get fresh food. They don't have as much processed food as we do. It's tragic because the obesity and the diabetes, it's really, really tough.
They have a lot of laws. The things that we eat, not even a lot.
We can't even have them. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I wanted to get back to some of the questions. You've given so much good information, but I want to make sure we cover everything we have in here. One thing that I have down here is, can you describe a typical day living with the fibromyalgia and migraines? And then I also say, can you describe the pain of fibromyalgia? Is it piercing, stabbing, dull ache? Is it in the muscles, the joints? Because for me, with rheumatoid arthritis, it's definitely in the joints. They've been inflamed. They are still painful. You feel like you have glass under your joints, but it's not the muscle pain. Things like that will come, but from other things, not necessarily the arthritis. I do love how you said there is no typical day. It is true. there couldn't be, because it seems to travel and it seems to change and it picks its own mind of where it's going to be. So just give us a little bit of insight into what it's like to be you, Heather, what it feels like to get up and try to take on the day.
Well, so it's true. There's no typical day because there's too many mitigating factors that play into fibro and migraine for that matter.
Yes.
How I wake up is a thing. Like if it's an abrupt wake up, that will immediately trigger and it'll be a rough day.
Oh, that
So
makes sense.
yeah. So there's, if
That's stress.
the fire alarm goes off or
Oh God, yes.
anything happens abruptly, right, then that can create it. And what's seen by others as me being grouchy is just my thinking, oh God, it's going to be a day. I'm
what
going to have to deal with this all day now.
Yeah.
It's really not me being grouchy. It's me internalizing the fact that now the day's been thrown.
Yeah.
I've had to dealing with this pain that I wouldn't have had to deal with had I not been awakened like that. So
Yes.
how I wake up is a big deal for me. I've gotten better because I've taken the supplements that put me to sleep, but I used to have insomnia terribly bad. So it would be 3, 4 in the morning before I'd fall asleep, and I mainly sleep for like 3 or 4 hours. Lack of sleep, depending on how well I've slept, that plays into it.
That's a trigger for pain. Stress, pain, cortisol level high, they increase.
Right. So the stressors are a big deal for me. What's going on, how the interactions with other people. And if I've already started to feel like that it could be a day that a migraine's going to hit, then I'll get the sound sensitivities and things. So loud noises and stuff will create more triggers because then, again, that's a stress.
Oh, yeah.
And so I usually try to rest as much as I can to wake up slow. So I may watch a podcast while I'm laying in bed, or I may, do some research because I'm a writer. Oftentimes I'll do research while I'm laying in bed. So I may lay in bed for a couple hours before I ever get out of bed just because I'm trying to, again, mitigate how the rest of the day is going to look. And then by the end of the day, depending on what I've done for the day, like I may just be totally wiped out. Like I said, now that I found this line, I've got supplements that I'm able to use to try to help me navigate some of that.
Yeah.
So there's energy drinks and things like that actually are helpful for me that I can usually do. But I really am conscious about my stress levels and also my rest. If I need a nap, I go lay down and take a nap. Like I can't help it.
Listening to your body. It's really good.
And that's been the hardest thing for me. Honest to God, I've done everything. I've done all the research. I've done all this stuff. Out of everything, the hardest thing for me to do is to listen to my body and actually act on what it's telling me, because before I would just push through it. To accommodate everybody else, right?
Right.
And now I'm requiring that same grace from them, from my family, because I can't continue to ignore that anymore.
Yeah. You hit the wall and you're going to be no good to anybody. And as much as I know that, and my big issue is, as much as I even know that logically, getting myself to do that is not always easy for me because of the type of personality I am, very type A, very much like I have this to get done today, and by damn, I'm getting it done. And that's really my curse to bear. It's also like a great gift that I have, that I can get so much done, but it really becomes my biggest curse because I screw myself so many times. And then I'm down and out for 2 weeks when I could have maybe just taken a nap and just relaxed, really just took it easy, and I might only have missed a few hours. So I'm still learning that lesson. God, I'm a really slow learner.
I tell you, it's super hard when you're driven and you're highly motivated. Your brain's going, I can do this. I actually had book 4. I'm writing a series, and I had book 4, and in my head, I had created a deadline, right? Because I self-published. So it's my deadline. It's not anybody else's deadline. All hell was breaking loose. There was stress. My stress level was high, and I had to let that deadline go. And it was painful. Now, I'm telling you, it was like a knife to my heart. I was like, and I had to actually dial it back a little bit and walk myself back. I'm like, you created that deadline. I didn't even put it out for my readers. But you created that deadline. You need to stick to your deadline because it does affect the other one.
Yeah.
This is probably 7 books. So I've done 3 more, and it pushes everything back. But I had to let that go because I could have pushed through it, but I would have been not my best self.
Yeah.
Probably not put out my best work.
Right.
And felt like shit while I was doing it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
you
Be
have to
kind
think
to yourself.
long term.
What are some of the most challenging symptoms you face from both of your conditions or either one? And what one is maybe the one that you're better at dealing with?
I'm probably better at dealing with the fibro just because I have a high pain tolerance. But the migraines are the worst because it messes with my vision.
Yeah.
That's the thing that stopped me dead in my tracks. I can deal with the pain, but the vision thing is the thing that affects me the most. So having the migraines under control, and again, it's all stress management for me. I really,
Yes.
I use reading as an outlet. I use the water aerobics as an outlet. When I can't get in the pool, I try to walk. I think one of the things that we need that people often don't talk about, and I think it's important, is the sexuality part of it, only because that creates endorphins. There's hormones. We don't talk about it because it's kind of taboo.
But we don't.
So important.
Yeah.
So important to have that
Just-
as an outlet too. It helps with the pain. It helps with your endorphins. And you talked earlier about the serotonin levels.
Yes.
And it increases serotonin, all those things. So anything that makes you feel good, right? So whether it's a hobby, whether it's
Right. It's so,
exercise, whatever needs to increase.
yeah.
So I bring that up because I don't think enough people talk about
Oh, we don't.
that as an outlet, but it is an outlet.
It is an outlet, especially women don't tend to talk about it. And we act as though it's not an important part of our lives. And we also act as if it's not an important part of a marriage. And let me tell you, that is a really important part. And what makes it so difficult is when you are in chronic pain, it hurts, you hurt. So it's really hard to motivate yourself to do that because you do forget about how good it's going to feel or how good you hope it feels afterwards and how close you feel to your partner. So I am totally with you on that. It's a really important aspect, but we don't talk about it much because we're embarrassed or, it's just not something as a society we talk about. We're very repressed.
The pain part, right? Because it does alleviate. You just don't want to hurt. So I think that you're already, because you have a fibro diagnosis, you're already isolated in a sense because it is a mystery diagnosis for not just the people dealing with it, but for the medical community, as you pointed out earlier.
Yes.
So for us to be able to work through these things, we have to be able to talk about every part of life and how it impacts every part of life and how we deal with each thing as it comes.
I agree. Given that both fibromyalgia and migraines they're invisible illnesses, you don't see that you're suffering. People look at you and you're vibrant and you do not look like you have an illness. You have what are called invisible illnesses, which I have been finding out as I interview people are so difficult because people don't say it. So there's really a lot of looks that people give. There's a lot of expectation or questioning. So tell me a little bit about that and how you cope with that, how you deal with that.
I learned about the invisible illness thing with my daughter. I learned that lesson early because she's a heart transplant, but she looks totally normal. And if she didn't wear a certain shirt that showed her scar, you would never know it from looking at her. She did really well in school, except for when she was sick. And so because the potential for her to be sick and to be hospitalized was so great, I fought really hard for her to have an education plan in school.
Yes.
That would allow her the flexibility that she needed when she became sick or ill in extended amounts of time.
Yes.
So, but it was a fight because she didn't look like she had a disability. And so I learned about the invisible illnesses then. And what I figured out is, people are going to look. There, when I don't always park in a handicapped place because I typically don't go out when I'm functioning at that level.
Yes.
I will leave the house.
Right.
But if I have to, then I will use it. Or if it's going to be a long day and I'm going to be out and conserve my energy, then I will. So I'll get the look. I learned, like I said, with her, and it was easier because it was my daughter, since
Yeah.
Mama Bear was there,
Yes,
right?
Mama Bear.
Um,
Yep.
Right. But it let me then have something to tap into later with myself. And I just really, and I may sound harsh when I say this, but I just really don't care.
No,
Um,
I'm really impressed that you say that. I actually think that's where we need to get to. We need to get to that point, and not worry about the judgments that people are making about us, because in the end, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And you've hit the nail on the head with it.
yeah, it doesn't matter because they're not coming home with me to see what it
Yeah.
looks like when the fallout hits. And I've also learned that most people have judgments. Their judgments are based on their own issues,
Yes.
right? And so I just let, I actually, when I turned 50, I got a tat, and I don't know, you can see it, but it says "let them."
So
And,
I like
and
that.
so that has been my mantra. Like, I'm going to let people be them,
Let
and
them.
I'm going to be me. Yeah. And I just do, because I, I found that if people are truly interested, they'll ask.
Yes.
And if they take the time to ask me, then I'll explain it. Often people will ask me what works for you, ask me for ideas or suggestions or things like that. And I'm happy to give it.
Yes.
I'm happy to give it. I'm a healer by nature. I'm a helper by nature.
Can see that.
And so I'm happy to do it. However, I'm not going to force it on anyone. And I'm not going to, again, extend that energy that I'm trying to conserve
Yeah.
to people that really have no interest, and they are going to believe what they want to believe anyway. And so I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm here to offer often additional suggestions, my perspective, what works for me.
Right.
But I'm definitely not here to force it on anyone. And I just don't engage with anyone that doesn't have an interest in actually being genuine and
Yes.
authentic.
And they are the people that you should be engaging with and spending the time explaining things to, because like you said, if somebody is a closed door about something, or they really are just going to be judgmental and they're only inside their own head, it's not going to make a damn bit of difference anyway. It is wasted energy. Absolutely wasted energy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Especially that concept of you did it for your daughter. So you had the best training, because you're right. You would never accept anything less for your daughter, but yet we do it for ourselves.
Right. And the thing about that is it's a very important lesson for the people around us too, because
yes,
if they see you advocating for yourself, or you taking responsibility for your own health, doing what you have to do for yourself, then they learn from watching. And my daughters learned from watching. That's what they have to do for themselves. I am. And obviously, I was the primary person that was dealing with the doctors anyway. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, what is it that you want to, you think we're not on the same page? And I said, well, you're the doctor and I'm the parent, and I think we need to get our roles straight. I said, it is your job as the doctor to educate me, to do all the research and offer me all the options and what your opinions are and why. It is my job as a parent to decide whether or not I follow those recommendations.
That's great.
And he didn't say anything for a minute,
but at least you got it across.
Yeah, he relented and he changed it back. So she's been able to advocate for herself. But I think that, again, she learned at an early age how to do that. She watched me do it. And it was kind of a wake-up call for her. She was like, wow,
yeah,
that's my mom and that's a doctor. And yet she knew I was right. You're responsible for your own health. Accept the responsibility. Do what you do to address it. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Right.
It's working for you, and it's giving you the results that you want. That's all that matters.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it is you and your body. I mean, that doctor's not going home with you, and he's not going to help you at 3 a.m. You're absolutely right. So it really is you being your own advocate, you being open to these things, you deciding, no, that's not going to work for me, and being comfortable with that decision, and being bold enough to say that to them.
Yeah, because you have to be able to advocate for yourself. And I'm not saying you disregard the doctor.
No.
There were a lot of times that they presented a case that made me rethink my stance on things. But it's because I did the research. I knew. And I could talk to them with a knowledge base.
Yeah.
So that I wasn't easily disregarded either, because
They respected you too.
I could present just as much information to the contrary to what they were trying to sell me on.
Yeah.
I think that we have to be aware of how these trials and research happens. It happens with people. And so you have to be considerate of all that. And you just have to weigh the pros and the cons.
And see that you can be very respectful. You don't have to be adversarial with it. You can be very respectful and get your point across. And you still maintain your dignity and your sense of, you're right and you're authentic and you're just trying to get the best out of the situation. What do you wish that the general public knew about living with fibromyalgia and migraines?
I think that the biggest thing that I wish that people realize is how fucking hard it is. It's so hard.
Yes.
It's so hard living with any kind of chronic illness.
It is.
But when it is invisible, like you say,
Yes,
it's even harder.
Yep.
Because not only do people around doubt you, but you don't even doubt yourself sometimes.
Yes,
Like,
you think you're
like,
crazy.
You're like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's a mental hurdle that you have to get over. Again, that's giving yourself grace, right? I'm dealing with two. So I'm constantly juggling to keep them managed. So anything that anybody does stress me out or to throw a wrench in what I'm already juggling, it's literally like them throwing another ball for me to juggle and keep in the air.
Right.
And so I think that, for me, the hardest thing is the lack of compassion and the lack of empathy. And I think we've not as a society anyway, allowing people to be their own journey, right? Like I'm on this journey, just allow me to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And try not to hinder it. Just don't make it hard. Life's hard enough. Let's try not to make it harder.
And just believing when I tell you I'm having a bad day or when I need extra help, just take me at my face value, don't second guess that I'm trying to get out of something or that I'm making this excuse up, because none of us want to feel like this. And all of us, like you had said, we want to contribute. We want to be part of society. The goal of this podcast is so people do hear what you're saying right now and maybe have more of an appreciation for someone, because especially like we're talking about these invisible illnesses and ones that are not really widely known. Now, I have arthritis. Everybody knows what arthritis is, and I don't know as much about rheumatoid versus osteo versus juvenile, but you know the term arthritis and you can see the obvious deformities from it. So there's something easier about that because your grandmother has it, your neighbor has it, someone you knew when you were younger had it. Fibromyalgia doesn't have that luxury to have that credibility because it's so new to people. And I think that's critically important.
I think that for the people around you to be able to read the cues, because a lot of times, like my daughter will see things before I even acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And so being able to read the cues is one piece of it. So in other words, somebody that can shield some of that stress that's coming in, or somebody that takes an active interest in that for you, is huge. Buffer some of that is really important too, because I think that's a hard thing for partners of people that have these diagnoses, knowing where that line is, because you don't want to take away somebody's personal power. But I think that there is something to be said for the partner that can step in and buffer some of that, to be protective about your energy as much as you are.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. And can also remind you, because I need reminding sometimes that, Meg, you have a lot on your plate. Like, we're worried that this might be too much. And sometimes I need to hear it from them. It's almost like, oh, yeah, they're probably right, because I don't always have a good idea of what is too much for me, like we talked about. So I think you're right.
Right.
Having the people that love us the most, looking for those cues and those signs. And it'd be great if I could be more proactive in telling them. And I try to do that, but I don't always. Sometimes I get so sick of hearing myself like, oh God, I need help with this or I need help with that I just get tired and I'm just like, oh, forget it. I'm not going to ask for help. And it's not fair to the people living with us because they can't always know that.
I am not the person to ask for help. I will not ask for help.
Yes.
And me working 60, 70 hours dealing with these was not a good thing.
Yes.
It was bound to manifest in a lot of other health conditions, which it did. But if you have a partner that recognized that and buffered some of that, then it may not have escalated to the point that it did.
Yeah.
Now, I hold responsibility in that too, because I allowed it to as well. You're just trying to push through and do what you can do, because that's how your brain's work.
Exactly. And you're not even seeing how crazy you can be sometimes. What steps could society and our healthcare systems do to give better support for people with chronic pain conditions like fibromyalgia and migraines?
I think quit judging people based on your own perception and your own experiences and expectations. But also, the biggest key for me is being open to alternative medicine and the practices, like we talked about before, Eastern and Western medicine. I think there's a place for both in our system. And I think that the acceptance of those alternative methods. I have done massage, I've done craniosacral stuff, I've done Reiki, I've done multiple what you would call alternative techniques. My oils, supplements, all those things.
Yes, you've done a lot.
Are considered all.
Yes.
Right. So I've done all those things. So I know what ones work for me. Like I said, the cranial was life-saving. The supplements have been life-saving. The diet changes, all those things. But if we were more open to those, I feel like more people, first of all, would seek treatment.
Yes.
And so the numbers would be more realistic or more representative. And secondly, I think more people would get relief and be able to lead more full lifestyles.
Yeah, I agree with you. And wouldn't it be really nice if health insurance covered some of these alternative therapies? Because, financially, I'm lucky that we're financially in good shape that we can try these alternative therapies, but there's so many people that are just barely affording groceries. So they're not going to go out and do acupuncture, and they're not going to be able to even afford organic food. I mean, that's the thing that's such a crime, I feel, is people deserve to be able to get the best treatment they can. And in this country, it doesn't really matter. It's all about the bottom line. So that's so frustrating.
Unfortunately, convenience is cheaper. I mean, the junk food is cheaper than the healthy. What I encourage people always to do is, if you can't buy the organic, is definitely look up the Dirty Dozen list. Follow that.
I've done that.
And also buy local. Know your farmer and know their practices. Because a lot of farmers won't get the organic seal or the organic certification because it costs so much, but they use the same practices. And then also learning things like preserving food, because then if you can buy it locally, you can buy it in bulk and you can put it up yourself, and then you know what's in it.
Yeah.
Because you put it in.
Now, the last question I have to ask you is, to finish the statement, what doesn't kill me? How would you like to finish it?
I think that, again, it's the idea of being forged out of fire. Every challenge that you are given in life can either be seen as a problem or a lesson.
I love that.
I think that we all need to start looking more at life like lessons, and we need to learn them so that we don't have to repeat the lesson. I think that everything that I've experienced in my life has been a lesson, and it's brought me to this place, right? Some lessons I've learned better than others. Some I'm still learning, like patience, but I'm getting better about it. That's the thing that I would take away from that. Like, what doesn't kill me is a lesson. It's preparing me. It's forging another piece of me out of the fire, be a better me, and to help someone else be a better them.
That's great. I think that's a great answer, and I totally agree with you. It's a teaching opportunity. It really is, and that's really one of the best ways to look at it, because it's not necessarily going to be fair, and it's not necessarily going to be something you deserved, and people can get really hung up on that. But if you can take that as a growth experience and grow from it for the next time, I think that it makes it somehow, it made it okay to live through. So anything else that we didn't cover, Heather? I mean, we did cover a lot, but is there anything else you want to say?
I would just like to tell people my best advice for people. And I would like to tell people, just don't quit. Seriously, it's that simple. Don't quit trying new things that might help you. Don't quit looking for answers. Don't quit living. Just don't quit living. Don't quit on yourself, because you deserve to enjoy life. And so do whatever you have to do that. Enjoy life.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And I'm so glad you joined me today. Really. And if you know of anybody else that might want to share their story, Heather, because, it was nice that Connie shared with you about it. And I'm always looking to talk with other people and learn from them, because I think everybody that's gone through something like chronic pain or chronic illness and comes out on the other side, or comes out a stronger person somehow because of it, I think there's so many things to share with other people that can help them as well. Thank you very much.
Well, we got cut off there at the end, but I really want to extend an extra appreciation thank you to Heather Gibson. I just really want to thank Heather for the time she gave us. Now, if anyone else out there listening has someone they know that would be a good guest to be on the podcast, or someone they would like to share their own story and their own journey with chronic pain or illness, to our website, which is whatdoesn'tkillme.net, and reach out to us and let us know you'd like to be a part of the podcast. Well, thanks so much, and until next time.
Know that hereafter I'm setting out for good. Show that clear laughter, I'm betting that you would. Took time, shook mine, I fell flat on the floor. Look fine, hook, line, and sinker, peaceful bloody war. Several times I made excuses for myself.